Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here is your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in Season 4 of the People in Fundraising Weekly Nonprofit Podcast. Today is Friday, May 9th, 2025, and I'm really excited to reconnect with former Harvard Business School frontline fundraiser Skip Nordhoff, who we worked together for a number of years back in Boston, and I'm just delighted that Skip said yes, and I'm excited to share his conversation with us today. So Skip, great to see you again.
It's great to see you again, Tim. I hope things are going well for you out in the Mountain West. It was great to have you as a colleague. I think we decided it was 7 odd years or so at HBS. We've both moved on since then, but it's great to see you again, and thanks for asking me to speak today.
Yes, my pleasure. And Skip, I'd love for you to just tell quickly our audience who you are by title, employer, and then we'll get into how you entered the field. And you've got a very interesting story, a background pre-social impact work and in the time you worked in nonprofit.
Right. So as you said, I'm Skip Nordhoff. I currently am the Senior Director of Development and Alumni Engagement at the Fletcher School at Tufts University, also known as the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. The Fletcher School was the country's first graduate school of international relations. Founded in 1933 in the interwar period, really by a really smart and insightful philanthropist who had been a member of the Tufts University board for a long time and who saw a real need for this development of professional diplomats and crisis solvers in the interwar period. So I've been here for about 15 months now. Awesome. In this current role, I actually am a part of the Tufts University Advancement Division. So we have a centralized advancement division of almost 200 staff members. Each of the 8 or 9 schools at Tufts University has its own teams that work on development and alumni relations. So I currently lead a 10-person team of staff members who cover everything from A to Z, from major gifts and hopefully principal gifts to annual giving, alumni relations, stewardship, donor relations, communications, the full gamut. But we sit under the Tufts University Advancement Division umbrella.
Terrific. Thank you. That's quite an operation.
It is, and it's different than some institutions. You know, you and I both came from a very, very decentralized institution, that being Harvard, as they say, each tub on its own bottom. Yeah. I think this is a really interesting difference in that we do have the centralized resources of a university advancement division. And so, you know, we have the opportunity to regularly call on our advancement colleagues who provide planned giving support, corporation and foundation relations support, as well as we have access to institutional leaders like the provost and the president, all to the benefit of our school, the Fletcher School at Tufts University.
Terrific. That's awesome. I'm just going to write down a quick follow-up about the school specifically and, you know, in these times of international diplomacy, what alumni are saying to you and colleagues. Before we get to that point, though, I do want to just have you please tell us about your background, both pre and ever since joining the nonprofit world, please.
Yeah, thanks. So like most of us, many of us in the fundraising arena, our sector, very few of us start right out, coming out of our undergraduate institution maybe, and aspire to be frontline fundraisers. I would say that was definitely my path. So this is a second of 2 significant careers. So I went to a little liberal arts college in Ohio, Denison University, had an amazing transformational experience. To some degree, that inspired the idea that I might want to work in higher education. Okay. But I also spent a couple of summers at Marine Corps Officer Candidate School while I was an undergraduate. And upon graduation, I was commissioned a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps. I ended up spending the next 7 years on active duty, predominantly flying helicopters for the Marine Corps, deploying overseas. And then I spent the next 21 years in the reserves from 1990. I shouldn't give you the dates, that'll age me, but let's just say some of that time was pre 9/11 and some of it was post 9/11. Okay. So I also then served several times on active duty post 9/11 with overseas deployments. Each of those instances, I took a leave of absence from the higher education institution I was working at. But when I was in the Marine Corps, actually, the very last job I had for a brief period of time was working as part of the Marine Corps Recruiting Command.
Okay.
And so I was working to some degree with our officer selection officers who worked in university settings. And I thought that I had an interest in going into education myself, probably as a teacher.
Okay.
So I went back to school for a master's degree in history when I was there in Washington, D.C.
Uh-huh.
And then I realized that I maybe teaching social sciences at for eighth graders and ninth graders was not necessarily for me, and the market was a difficult market at the time.
Okay.
So I actually ended up getting a job with an outplacement firm, a third-party recruiting firm that was doing placements in independent private schools. And I took a job with them and then started running the recruiting program at colleges that would recruit rookie teachers coming out of higher education, going to teach in private independent day schools. So think teachers who are dorm parents and coaching 3 seasons and teaching 3 sections of, civics and high school history. And I then parlayed that into moving into higher education. My first job in higher education was at Bryant University as the director of employer relations in their career office.
Oh, okay.
And that was really enjoyable, but it was on the student affairs side.
Yeah.
And all that time, I had a friend and one of our former colleagues at HBS who was already in the independent world and then moved into higher education.
Yes.
And I really respect him, and he gave me some good advice. He was like, you can spend a career in student affairs, but I think you'd be great in development work. So I moved over and cut my teeth as a leadership gift officer at Little Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts.
Oh, yes.
And then made my way to Harvard in 2007, and then here I am today.
That's amazing. What a varied and interesting career history. That's what made you decide, when you were at Denison, that you wanted to do those summers with the Marine Corps summer program, Skip?
Yeah, so I'm not a great athlete, but I was a good enough athlete to be a serious competitor in Division III athletics, and so I was really an outdoorsy, athletic-y kind of person, and I was inspired by the Marines and just everything about the organization. And I happened to kind of as I stumbled into development work, I stumbled into the opportunity to take the aviation competency exam, if you will.
Yeah.
They were looking for pilots. I had no aviation experience, and they're like, "Would you like to take the test?" And I was like, "Sign me up." So it was all new to me. No experience, no family history of military service. But what really, really inspired me, and still inspires me today in philanthropy, is the idea of service to something larger than yourself or oneself. Yeah. So I felt like public service, and I still feel this today. Public service is really amazing. It's amazing for the people who participate in it, and it's amazing for the people who are positively impacted by it. Totally. And so that's the approach I've taken to my professional career, and I just was really inspired by it. And earning the title of Marine is something that you carry with you for your entire life, and it's something that's especially meaningful for me. But I realized also I didn't want to do that as my full-time gig for my entire life. Sure. There are. It's very difficult on family, on professionals, a lot of time overseas. a lot of long hours, a lot of hard work, a lot of dangerous missions, etc. So I kept with that as a reservist, but I really wanted to explore this higher education avenue. And there were a number of people along the way who really took a chance on me. So Judy Clare, who was leading the career services office at Bryant, who hired me in the summer of 2000 and took a chance on me, was great. The woman who hired me, Diane Robbins, who hired me at Wheaton College and took a chance on me moving from student affairs into leadership giving, took a chance on me. And a name that might be familiar to you, David Woodruff, who is kind of a legend here in the greater Boston philanthropy community, was the gentleman who I met, who was leading the development office at the T.H. Chan School of Public Health, the Harvard Chan School. And I bumped into him, and he started chatting with me. And lo and behold, he became, he hired me at HSPH, and he's still a mentor today.
That's wonderful. So important to have those connections. And people, as I said, they took a chance on you. They saw talent, skills, personality, and it's like, yeah, we can help guide you on this next stage. Yeah. And I just remember a couple of reflections, Skip, if I can take a moment here. We worked together, as you mentioned, at Harvard Business School. I was on the prospect research team. And I remember I believe it was 2015, you were doing one of your overseas deployments.
Yeah.
And I wasn't heavily involved with your portfolio and proposals, but I remember Marianne Ayako, my manager, coming to me one day and was like, Skip has a plan and has already reached out to all of the prospects in his portfolio. And she's like, he has who you should contact while Skip is deployed. And she was very impressed, and kind of external, second tier I was too. Just the methodology, of being so practical and efficient at, I've already got a plan for each one, and it wasn't carbon copy. I remember Marianne saying, Skip's got this particular message for this donor in India, this donor in the Middle East, and that just made a real impression on me, because I've worked with plenty of gift officers who swear they'll enter a contact report and never do. But I think that, for me, that spoke to the pride and importance you placed on your job. And it was the relationship beyond you. It was on behalf of your employer. And as you talked about earlier, like service to others beyond yourself. That is an example that comes to mind with you.
Thank you. I would have to attribute a lot of those personal attributes to the Marine Corps. So I definitely along the way learned a very strong work ethic, and a certain sense of professionalism, which maybe, I don't ever want to be doing anything less than carrying my own load, so to speak. And so you're right. So I joined you at HBS in January of 2011. I had been at the Chan School, but I'd been mobilized for about 17 months, believe it or not. I was in DC and then in Afghanistan. And when I was coming back from that set of mobilization orders, I had worked with great colleagues at HBS, Beth Murray and Flo Amoroso, and I had this great really appreciation for the business school. And I transitioned over to HBS at that time in January of 2011. And so you and I had been colleagues for 4.5 years or so already.
Yes.
And I had inherited the portfolio in South Asia and India. And just around the 2013 time, we were opening the research center in Istanbul. And I picked up the Middle East and Arab Gulf region portfolio as we tried to expand our impact there.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, Uncle Sam came around again in the summer of 2015 and said, guess what, Skip, it's your time to go again.
Yeah.
So, I'd had some work in the region, And actually, so from August of 2015 to the end of February 2016, I was mobilized as a senior Marine in the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan,
Yes.
representing Marine Forces Central Command. So, I packed my bags and I went to Oman. But I wasn't out of touch with the school, and I had enough lead time. I would have to say, I would also call out, I had the undying support of our dean at that time, Nitin Nohria, who, when I went in and said, hey, Nitin, guess what? I'm being called away. He's like, you go do what you need to do, and we'll be here when you get back.
Awesome.
And that kind of leadership and support is so appreciated.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had time to put a plan in place, and I wasn't entirely out of touch with folks. And I thought, actually, when I came back in March, we then launched our campaign events in Dubai and Istanbul, and I felt like I hadn't really missed a beat, even though I'd been away. And we have great alums in that region. We had fantastic staff colleagues, Asel Sekin, who was running the Istanbul Center at that time. It just made it so much easier to do that. And I'm hopeful that I think we had a really good impact then in the years after that.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for following up on that. I wanted to talk my follow-up to your current role at Tufts, the Fletcher School. I'm just curious, in this time where there is such an emphasis in the news about international relations, fracturing of relationships in some areas, U.S. pulling back in some ways from longtime allies and organizations, or at least proposing we do that for various reasons, as well as other nations forming newer alliances. I wonder, how much of that trickles down to your engagement with prospects and alumni? Are they talking to you about donating? Are there programs, symposia that they can attend and support on those topics?
Yeah, great question. And it's they don't just allude to that kind of stuff. It is in our face, day in and day out. So just to give you some perspective, so as I mentioned, so the Fletcher School was founded in 1933. For many, many years, Fletcher was much better known for Tufts than Tufts is or was at the time.
Okay.
I think that, the national reputation and standing of Tufts and the college. So the college is a NESCAC college, so it's in the line with Amherst and Williams. It's, and it's in that realm. It's a little bit larger than those institutions, but we're a multifaceted, multi-schooled university. We've got a medical school, a dental school, a school of veterinary medicine, a school of nutrition. We've got a graduate school of arts and sciences, a school of engineering, the Fletcher School. It's a big enterprise. We've got, I think, 13,500 students. Fletcher School is smaller. We've got about 400 to 500 students at any given time between our on-campus residential and our combined hybrid programs. We've got about 11,000 living alumni.
Okay.
Globally, the school has been very, very international. Our current student population in the master's programs is 50% international.
Wow.
Our largest international contingents are from India, China, and Ghana.
Oh, wow. Wow. Amazing.
Our largest international alumni populations are in Japan and United Kingdom.
Wow.
Places like that. We've had real long-standing relationships with organizations like the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry in Japan. Just amazing, very, very global perspective here.
Yes.
We have, but most of our alumni are U.S. based. Our largest alumni constituency is in the greater Washington, D.C. area.
Sure.
2,500 or so alumni, many, many, many of whom are career foreign service, career USAID, career, really, really, lot of public sector servants. Our current students 1/3 go into the private sector, 1/3 into the public sector, and 1/3 into the civil society or intergovernmental not-for-profit sector.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a long way to say we are impacted immediately.
Sure.
While I think we don't necessarily have the same target on our back here that some institutions currently have, and this is my personal opinion, I wanna say, we have absolutely been seriously impacted. So many of our alumni have lost their jobs. They're dealing with the impact on the public sector in the United States, and it is right in our faces.
Sure.
So the school is known really, really well in diplomacy, international negotiations and conflict resolution, security studies, climate and resource policy, renewable energy, a lot of different areas. But this really is something that is hitting our alumni community very, very hard.
Sure.
I would say it also, to some degree, we're very hopeful it doesn't put too much of a damper. But again, my personal opinion, it's putting a damper on young people's interest or questioning of whether or not there's a career for them in public service.
Absolutely.
And I think that is enormously detrimental. That is reflecting on my own experience in public service in the military. I was really drawn to it by the idea that I could really make an impact in it, and that it would be rewarding for me and appreciated to some degree by my family, my community, etc.
Sure.
I think it's really difficult times right now.
Yeah. 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 Very well said. And I think that it's such a fraught time, and I think you articulated that well. So
Thanks.
thank you. Yeah.
So really, we are really doing our best to, the other thing I'll say related to that is that we have a relatively, again, it's a school that's more than 90 years old,
Yeah.
but it's a relatively small school. Our alumni community is so strong and so connected to one another. There's a lot of different kind of terms they use for one another. There's you're a Fletcherite, or you're part of the Fletcher family. Some old timers refer to them as the Fletcher Mafia. I'm not supposed to use that term, but it really is what I have found here is that there is an enormous, strong connection of our alumni back to the school. There's an enormous appreciation and affinity for the school. There's a really strong belief in the impact that we make and that our alumni make. And they're really willing to go out of their way for one another. So we've really tried to be out in the community. We've not shied away. We've been doing events in DC. We've tried to bring community together. We've tried to connect alumni who are in need of career help to our Office of Career Services. We've really tried to some degree, we're still definitely a fundraising organization. We really need to develop our philanthropy to be able to support the institution in these difficult times.
Sure.
But we've really tried to develop the alumni relations and alumni engagement component. And, we have people who are out there making an impact day in and day out. We just, in the last couple of months, the Deputy Secretary General of NATO is a Fletcher alumna who was just appointed to her position.
Awesome.
A brand new minister who was just named to the new government in Syria post-conflict is a Fletcher alumna.
Wow.
Those are two that just come right to the top of my mind, and they're really amazing, impactful people.
Yeah.
Really just amazing superstar alumni who I was just emailing with another alum who was with Kissinger and Nixon on the opening of China in 1971.
Goodness, wow.
Career ambassador and foreign service officer, who was one of the few living remaining people who was on that diplomatic mission for the U.S. opening access to and engaging substantively with China.
Oh my goodness, one of the landmark moments in the Cold War.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's an amazing place with really focused on trying to educate leaders who are really focused on solving complex, global, multidisciplinary problems.
That's amazing. And you mentioned the Syria cabinet member as an alumna. Is that correct? So,
She is.
so she's the only female in the transitional Syrian cabinet.
I don't know that. I don't know that
Okay.
for sure. I don't know that for sure. But I do know that that just recently was in the New York Times.
Yeah.
So it's public information. So I don't know her.
Yeah.
Her name is Hind Kabawat, if I'm not mispronouncing that. And that's my understanding that she has been named a minister in the new post-conflict, post-Civil War government that's being stood
Okay.
up.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah.
What a great overview there. And that as a follow-up to that, it's this question two, and you've done a great job talking about your career and the different regions of the world that you have been involved with, both in the Marine Corps and as a nonprofit leader. So much of your work has been in India, Middle East, Southeast Asia. What was the onboarding like for you in terms of different cultures, different viewpoints toward philanthropy as you were, working in Turkey or working, in Dubai or India, for example? What did you need to brush up on? What did you need to
Yeah.
learn from the beginning?
I'm sorry to say there wasn't a ton of onboarding to some degree. I was hired at HBS, and you know how we were organized a little bit differently. We were functionally and chronologically kind of organized,
Yeah.
but they said, "Hey, Skip, we got this great opportunity for you. We're going to give you the India portfolio." Um, and I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I've never been to India before." But I have to say, and you know this, I had the opportunity to stand on the shoulders of good fundraisers who went before me.
Yeah.
Um, just within I didn't work on the gift initially. Our then Board of Dean's Advisors chair, and the dean at the time, before Nitin came in, solicited Mr. Tata for the absolutely amazing, significant gift that enabled us to build Tata Hall, which is the
Yeah.
cornerstone of executive education at HBS.
Mhm.
So I arrived in January of 2011. That gift commitment had been closed earlier in that fall or summer. And I just inherited that. But I inherited an amazing dean, or I came in, and so Nitin, who I mentioned before, started as a dean, I believe, on July 1st of 2010,
Mm.
and is an amazing person. So the idea of taking over an India portfolio with a dean of Indian origin at the helm and a very respected academic and leader, and just an amazing human being. I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. So no onboarding, but what I did bring to that, I would say, and what I really think is important for fundraisers, particularly frontline fundraisers who are out there engaging with very accomplished leaders who might ask you in one sentence about the institution, the next sentence about your opinion on the global economy or whatever,
Sure.
life experience. And so I had been overseas. I had worked in different cultures. I had worked in Afghanistan. I had worked at USAID on a mobilization. So I had an appreciation for, I think, some of the developing economies. And I just dove in with both feet.
Yes.
I'd say I read a lot. I read a lot about India. I read a lot about our alumni. I tried to become as fluent as I possibly could. I relied very heavily on an amazing, fabulous partner that I had the entire time I was there, Anjali Raina, who's the
Oh,
executive director of the India Research Center, with whom I could not have met any of the success I had.
wonderful.
So she was fantastic, and I literally just we got a plane ticket and I went to India in June to lay the groundwork and to figure out what was what and where was what, where, how to navigate around Mumbai. And then
Yeah.
lo and behold, Nitin and I went with a cardboard model of Tata Hall to go visit Mr. Tata in
Wow.
Bombay House in August of 2011. And we're like unpacking this cardboard model of a conception of Tata Hall. And Mr. Tata was trained as an architect at Cornell.
Yes, that's right.
So Nitin's sitting there and going like, "What do you think?" And this is this larger than life philanthropist, and and then we saw that whole project all the way through groundbreaking, topping off, and grand opening. And I
Yeah.
drive by Stroh Drive whenever I drive by, and I look over and I glance and I see it, and it's amazing. It's an amazing representation of a really caring philanthropist who has since passed.
Yes.
But anyway, so I read a lot. I think you have to just go in and just immerse yourself.
Yeah.
And I tried to read and I tried to be culturally sensitive.
Mhm.
There's a book that's fallen out of favor. It was a little bit about Afghanistan. It was called Three Cups of Tea.
Oh, yes.
And it was really talking about, it was criticizing the U.S. military for its role in Afghanistan to some degree, because it was saying, you can't just roll in and do it, be transactional and short term. So what I really found is that I think you really have to take a long term approach.
Yeah.
So in my 12 years at HBS, I think I was in India somewhere between 30 and 36 times.
My goodness.
I was there a lot. And I would be there for, a week or 10 days at a time. And I just got to know a lot of people and have a lot of conversations. And I will be honest, I made a lot of friendships.
Awesome.
Same goes in the Middle East.
Yeah.
The Arab culture is a very welcoming culture,
Mm.
one that a guest is invited into their own home,
Yeah.
who is offered food and refreshment. And just being sensitive to that and being responsive to that and being well read to some degree
Yeah.
and being respectful, so and people in those geographies and those cultures do philanthropy differently.
Totally.
One of the, if I'm not misspeaking, one of the five pillars of Islam is charity.
Yes, it is.
And so people of that faith are obliged to be charitable.
Yes.
And it's part of their life. I found in India that many successful Indian philanthropists and business leaders are enormously charitable to their communities of origin. They might have grown up in a more rural setting. They might have grown up in a second or third tier city, but they support their local temple, their local community, local schools, orphanages. And so while they approach philanthropy a little bit differently in some ways than we do in the US, they're enormously charitable communities and people.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Yeah, just a wealth of experience you've had overseas, and I imagine that translates really well to your work now at Fletcher as well, with the alumni and students and so forth.
Yeah, I think it just gives me an appreciation, and I haven't been to India yet in my work for the Fletcher School, but I'll be going back to Europe again in June, and I've had the opportunity to be in the Middle East and the Gulf region a couple of times, traveling with our dean, these are really important geographies today,
Yes.
and so. We need to really be paying attention to them, and I really enjoy the international travel. It can be tough on the body and the sleep cycle, but
Yeah.
being out and being engaged with alumni, donors, philanthropists, committed volunteers, it's really, I think, the most enjoyable part of the job.
That's awesome. That's great. I want to pivot to another community that you are involved with and actively supporting, and it's a recent development in your professional, personal life. A few months ago, so this is May, and in February, I believe, if I've done my prospect research right, you became a board member of Huts for Vets, and you posted about that on LinkedIn. I would love for you to tell our audience how that leadership opportunity came about. What about the mission appealed to you, and what you'd like to share with our audience, Skip, about Huts for Vets, please.
So I was introduced to Huts for Vets in January or February of 2023.
Okay.
I was introduced. We can't be having a conversation without a linkage back to HBS. So I met one of the things I also really enjoyed my time at HBS is there's a really strong veterans community, student community, and alumni community.
Yeah.
And I did it in an informal way there. I kind of informally was engaged with student veterans who were there doing their MBA. I was an informal mentor to the Armed Forces Alumni Association, which is the student association of veterans. And I met an amazing leader, current student in the MBA program, Ryan Del Grosso. Ryan is an Air Force Academy alum. He's a medically retired U.S. Air Force Special Operations officer.
Oh, wow.
And he had been involved with Huts for Vets for a number of years, and he was on the board at that time.
Okay.
And he and I met, and we started chatting. We grabbed a beer together, and given some things going on in my personal and professional life and everything, I was like, wow, man, this sounds like an amazing organization. I'd love to learn more about it.
Yeah.
And Ryan's like, well, hey, you should come out to the mountains of Colorado and participate in one of our programs.
Awesome.
And I did that summer of 2023. I did in the summer of 2024. So I went as a participant in the summer of 2023.
Okay.
And then I went back as a volunteer staff member in the summer of 2024 on one of the trips.
Okay.
And I've been really engaged with Ryan and other members of the staff and the board there. And I think it's an amazing organization. Maybe I can tell you a little bit more about it.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So Huts for Vets was founded in 2013.
Okay.
It's based out in the Carbondale, Aspen, Basalt area of the Rocky Mountains, a couple hours west of Denver. It was founded in 2013 by a couple of Vietnam era guys. One of whom was a Marine veteran of Vietnam. One of whom was not a service member, was not a veteran.
Okay.
But during the course of the conflicts of the early 21st century, these guys saw a real need to give back to the veterans community. And these are guys who lived in the Mountain West and were fly fishermen and hikers and alpine skiers. And I mean, they really knew the benefits, the mental health and health benefits of being in the mountains.
Oh, sure.
And they're like, you know what? This would be really cool if we could bring some veterans out here who are going through difficult times in their lives and expose them to this amazing environment.
Yes.
So they founded Huts for Vets, and Huts for Vets is a 501c3. It runs week-long, really 4.5-day, 5-day long programs, free to its veterans participants.
Awesome.
There's normally about 12 to 14 participants per trip. They run all male trips, all female trips, and co-ed trips.
Okay.
And free to veterans, you apply to the organization, and the focus is bringing veterans who are having difficulty or who have experienced difficulties in transitioning from their military experience, combat or non-combat, back into civilian society.
Wow.
They might be dealing with injuries, wounds, mental health issues, the invisible and visible wounds of war.
Oh, sure.
They might be dealing with substance abuse issues. They might be dealing with personal relationship issues. As can sometimes be the case, they might have fallen out of shape. They might have not be in great health. And so they come together in groups of other veterans with a organized staff. There's always a psychologist on staff. There are other veterans who are on staff. and we go out and we hike in the wilderness of the Rocky Mountains. Not enormously difficult, but at elevations of 10 and 11,000 feet.
Oh, yes.
The air's quite thin, as you know, living
That's
in the
an
West.
adjustment. Yeah.
And we not only experience wilderness and nature for its mental and physical health benefits, but we also experience it for these trips for the camaraderie.
Totally.
So one of the facets is there's also guided discussions.
Okay.
So the organization has done a lot of research into this. So we use Henry David Thoreau, Viktor Frankl, Wendell Berry, Robert Frost. Short snippets and longer excerpts of people who have written about the impact of nature and being one with nature, and also being part of humanity.
Yes.
And so you go for a little hike, you have a meal, you sit around on your pack, and you break out a reading. Everybody reads a little bit of it, and then it's in a totally non-judgmental space. People reflect. What does that mean for you?
Oh, yeah.
What is that? What do you think that means for you as a person, as a human being, as a veteran?
Yeah.
As a father, a husband, whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I'd say the last component is there's a solo component. So for anyone who's familiar with kind of Outward Bound, that self-reflective time when you're out in the woods in the quiet, you might be getting there might be a mountain downpour, you might be getting soaked wet, or it might be a glorious sunshiny day, you might be surrounded by mountain flowers. And often participants use that opportunity to journal, to reflect on their experience.
Yeah.
And then they share.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And it's really impactful.
I bet. I can imagine that bringing together of community. They do the solo work, what it's meant for them, and to have that shared, candidly being vulnerable.
Yeah,
must be such a rewarding and moving experience.
It is. Sorry, I'm a little verklempt here. I'm a little
okay.
That's a little emotional about it. It's an amazing organization, and so when an organization like that asks you to be more involved and to give back to it, you can't say no.
Totally. Yeah. What a meaningful mission. Thank you for sharing about that, Skip.
It's a great organization. So I would encourage anyone. You can easily Google Huts for Vets. And it's an amazing organization. Refer veterans that you know to it. Reach out to me to find out more. It's a fantastic organization. And I'll be back out there again in August for a week at another hut. The last thing I'll say about, we have amazing partners out there. So we partner with the 10th Mountain Division, which is a not-for-profit association. And the huts that we use, hence the name Huts for Vets, are a series of alpine, high elevation huts. Think of the Appalachian Mountain Club hikes along the AT.
Yeah.
They're not as big as that, but these are fixed structures with fireplaces and stoves, and they're out there. And the 10th Mountain Division donates 6 weeks worth of access to huts for the program. So when we're in those huts at that elevation, we're utilizing those facilities, and they're just amazing, beautiful places. And we couldn't do this without amazing partners, corporate support, foundation support of individual donors, and the 10th Mountain Division Association.
Yeah.
10th Mountain Division Association. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for adding that component to the conversation. And when your interview goes live, Skip, I'll put a link in that'll take people to the Huts for Vets website, and they can find out more. And that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I mean,
you're very welcome.
I'm glad you're involved in that. It seems like a very meaningful endeavor for you.
It's another meaningful endeavor, and it's another opportunity to serve an organization greater than oneself.
Absolutely. And I would just say on that note, I don't mean to be trite, and I'm sure as a veteran you hear this from well-meaning people, but I just admire you for serving our country. And now I'm getting verklempt. I have an uncle who was at 19 a Marine Corps rifleman in Vietnam, and I know the impact. He's now in his 70s, and I know sort of the mental health challenges that he's had. But he speaks so movingly of his time in the Corps. And so I just want you to hear that from me, that I admire you, I respect you, and it's an honor to be connected to you for what you've done for our nation and for our profession.
Thanks, Tim. That is very meaningful coming from you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Skip, this has been such a delightful and fascinating conversation. You've covered such an interesting range of topics, and you've done it with warmth and sincerity. And I'm just so glad to have this time to reconnect with you. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Tim. I hope to see you either in the Mountain West or here on the East Coast again. But I am especially appreciative to you and for what you're doing for our profession. This is a great opportunity for me to talk a little bit about the impact of philanthropy. And so thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure. I'm totally honored that you would be a guest today. So thank you. And for our audience, you'll be able to find Skip's conversation across various platforms this summer. LinkedIn with the link to the YouTube conversation, Podbean and Spotify for those who prefer to just listen to conversations. And then thanks to my 100th People in Fundraising episode guest, Luis Diaz of the Donor Participation Project. He is sponsoring my current website, peopleinfundraising.wordifysites.com. So Skip, I'm just excited to share your conversation across all those platforms. And I know that many people in the HBS community and beyond will be tuning in and learning some insights from you and reflecting on how fortunate we've been to be connected with you.
My pleasure, Tim. Be well. Have a great weekend, okay?
You as well. Thank you, Skip.
All right. Cheers.
Bye-bye.